Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work for a chain convenience store company located in the Midwest and based in Virginia. I enjoy my job and have many regulars who stop in, and a couple of them are regulars. Now, normally there is only one person on shift unless it's the morning when the manager is there. On this particular day, it was just me. It was a busy day and I had a line of customers. The phone rings and I recognize a phone number. I look out the window to see one of the wheelchair-bound veterans outside. I acknowledge that I see him and give him a 1-minute signal to let him know I will be out in a minute. I look at the line and where the last customer is to make a note of when I will help him. After I get done with that person, I kindly apologize and state that I have a wheelchair-bound customer that I need to assist first to the line of customers. Big fishing tournament in town as well as it being summer. They understand and have no problem with this, and 90% of our customers are regulars. As I'm getting this customer's order, my other wheelchair veteran pulls up. I walk over and let him know that I will be out in a few minutes to pump his gas. This customer knows that I keep my word and states, okay. I'm walking back to the store and holding the door for the customer walking in. We will call her Karen. Even though I didn't know this at this time, I made a note to help her after I helped the second veteran as he was first. I go and get the items that my first veteran requested, bring them up and cash them out. I apologize one more time and take the items to the customer. Upon entering the store, I am met with a rude response. Karen is yelling at me that I shouldn't be assisting like that and he should come in. She doesn't know he's in a wheelchair. I state I'm sorry, but he was next in line, and I told her why I did what I did. She continues to rant and says he should have someone come with him then. I ignored her and headed to the register to ring up the customers who waited patiently, which was about 2 minutes max. I finally got done with the line as most just wanted cigarettes or to pay for their gas they have bummed. We are not a prepay location even though corporate wants us to be. I finally get through the line and Karen, who was complaining the whole time about the line, is the next customer. I start to tell her that I will be right back and I need to help the veteran next. But she gets in my face and demands to know why her card isn't working at the pump. I ignored her comment and told her I will be right with her after I help the veteran at the pump as he was next. She states that she's next and I need to help her first. I had already had enough of this lady and I didn't want to say something that would get me in trouble. I let the customers in line know that I will be right back. About 2 minutes later, I came back inside after having pumped the gas for this veteran. The first thing that I hear is, "About freaking time, took you long enough." This was the straw that broke the camel's back. I looked at her and said, "Ma'am, I had 2 regular customers come in who are both disabled veterans and wheelchair bound. We help them when they come in. Sometimes they come in when there are 2 people here and sometimes not, and almost never at the same time, nor usually the same day. Yes, I'm busy, but I helped them in the order that they came in. I have heard nothing but complaining from you. No other customer even said a word. In fact, I got praise from a few because I did that. Why do you feel that they should have to wait longer because he came in after them?" Karen states that she's in a hurry and needs to get to work, and then pushes me with her hands towards the register and tells me, "Do your job and help me." Karen had met me at the door. I tell her that I'm refusing service and she can go somewhere else. Karen demands I call the manager in and she wants to speak to him. I tell her that he's gone, but she tells me to call him. I state that I will not and ask her to leave. This part is the best part. In line, I see the sheriff who is off duty. I tell Karen 1 second and I speak up so the sheriff can hear me. "Sheriff, would you step up here please?" The sheriff steps up and has seen the whole thing. Karen is white now. The sheriff asks me if I would like to press charges for battery as she physically put her hands on me, to which I stated I would. Karen tries to run away but is held up by the customers blocking the door. The sheriff calls for a deputy to respond. About 5 minutes later, Karen is crying as she's being put into handcuffs. She's charged with battery and public disturbance and banned from the location. Her husband had to leave work to come get the kid who was in the car and was not too happy at all. I posted last night about an encounter I'd had with a neckbeard who tapped me on the shoulder, asked me if I was single, and then flipped out when I said no. I mentioned that I'd dealt with a Karen not 20 minutes before that. I will post that story if folks were interested. So here it is. In my other post, I explained that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic disorder affecting collagen. Among many other symptoms, it tends to make people look significantly younger than we are. So although I'm 32 years old, I'm often mistaken for being a teenager. I dress in a very goth/punk style, which I'm pretty sure probably adds to that. EDS often causes something called POTS, which in simple terms, meaning that being upright causes my heart rate to increase, my blood pressure to decrease. And the longer I'm standing, the worse it gets. If I'm standing for too long, I black out. I take medication that helps a lot, but I've had to stop taking it in order to get the Rona vaccine. So my heart rate and blood pressure are completely uncontrolled at the moment. I just arrived at my local shopping mall and got hit with a wave of dizziness, which is a surefire sign that I need to sit down before I fall down. There were 3 armchairs together for customers to use, and I sat down in one that had an abandoned empty shopping trolley next to it. The other 2 seats were occupied. I checked my numbers with a blood pressure monitor I carry with me, and they were pretty bad. So I downed a few salt tables and started scrolling through Reddit on my phone while I waited for things to improve. About 2 minutes later, the wild Karen appeared. ETA Karen matched the stereotype in every conceivable way and looked to be 45 to 50 years old. She marched over and barked at me to get out of her seat, claiming she clearly left her trolley next to it to reserve it. I told her the seats are there for everyone's use, and people leave empty trolleys all over the shopping center, so that really didn't mean anything. During previous disputes about seating, I've sometimes told people I couldn't move anyway because of my PB and HR condition, but it's never seemed to help the situation and is none of their business, so I don't tend to mention it unless it's genuinely necessary. Karen, hand on hip, said she didn't ask for my idiot opinions, and then when an adult tells me to jump, the only acceptable response is how high. I laughed and said, "Lady, I'm 32 years old and I don't answer to you. Leave me the heck alone." She scoffed and said, "Nonsense, don't you dare lie to me. Where the bloody heck are your parents?" I said that's none of your business and to stop harassing me because I'm not moving. As I was saying this, an older man vacated one of the other armchairs with a groan and an eye roll. "You and me both, mate, you and me both." So I gestured to it and said, "There you go, Karen. There is a free seat right there. Happy now?" Karen folded her arms and, with an entirely misplaced air of superiority, said, "That's your seat. This one is mine. And you're going to move, young lady." Entirely done with her, I laughed and said a simple no, going back to my phone. At this point, she pretty much lost it. She shouted, "Get out of my chair," and kicked the side of the seat hard enough to make me jump. As I responded with a stunned, "Wow, you're legitimately crazy, aren't you?" A member of the cleaning staff took notice and came over. She told Karen to calm down and asked me if I needed her to call security. I was going to say yes, please, but Karen jumped in and snapped, "Please do." And then to me, "I would love to see security drag you out by your ear." He must have been nearby because a security guard quickly appeared and asked me what the problem was. Of course, Karen again jumped in and started telling him that this trophy little brat had pushed her out of her seat and stolen it from her, and how it was clearly hers because that's my trolley right there. The security guard turned to me and asked if that was what happened. I said actually, like I told her, I'm 32 years old and she didn't show up until after I sat down. She said she'd reserved the seat and I told her that's not how it works. She's been harassing me to get me to move and your colleague here saw her shouting and kicking the chair. Karen gasped and, with an accusational pointed finger, shouted, "You lying little brat!" But the cleaner backed me up. The security guard calmly told Karen that she can't claim or reserve seats she's not using, and that if she wanted to sit down, there were now 2 free seats right there. A third person had now also left. Karen went red in the face and barked back, "Listen here, you will make her move or I will be having words with your manager." The security guard sighed and told Karen that she had 2 options. Either she could walk away now, leave me alone and be allowed to get on with her day, or he would be escorting her out of the shopping mall. Surprisingly, Karen actually went with the third option. She scoffed and stammered and eventually opted to shout about how unbelievable this all was and that she was going to the center management's office to get the security guard and the cleaner fired right now, and stormed off. Without her empty trolley, of course. The security guard let her leave, and unfortunately I don't know what happened with her after that point. The security guard apologized to me for her behavior and I told him it wasn't his fault and that I was sorry he and the cleaner had to deal with stuff like that too. He excused himself, saying he should probably follow her to make sure she made it to the center manager's office without any further incidents along the way. And I chatted with the cleaner a bit about how ridiculous and childish people can be. She told me this was far from the worst and weirdest she'd seen, and that I wouldn't believe the nonsense some people do, but didn't elaborate. A plus side was that the whole situation had aided in increasing my blood pressure, so I sat there for about another 10 minutes to let my heart rate level out. I was then able to get up and carry on with my day. Let me preface this story by admitting that 1, it takes 2 people to have problems in a marriage, and 2, my husband is the one that made vows to me, not the other people involved in the story. However, the chance for revenge simply fell onto my lap, and these other people are objectively terrible people, while my husband is not. My husband and I have been married for almost 17 years, and these past 2 years have really been tiring for us both. Teenage kids, mental health issues, job losses, pandemic, you name it. He started a new job and got back in contact with a female friend from high school who was employed at the same place. They restarted their friendship and I knew about it. Part of their friendship must have included venting about each other's significant others, and they bonded over their unhappiness, I guess. Over the next few months, they continued their friendship online only, and it eventually morphed into her sending photos to him. 2 days later, she sent me snapshots of what ensued. She also shared them with her boyfriend, who then threatened my husband's life, started to harass me, and threatened to come into my workplace until I had to call the police. While I don't in any stretch of the imagination consider my husband to be totally innocent in all this, what I think happened was that this woman found my husband vulnerable and simply used and manipulated him to both make her boyfriend jealous and try to completely destroy our marriage just to be vindictive. I mean, wouldn't most people believe that? My life imploded for a bit, and I was reeling. Once I started looking into who these people are and what they are about, who wouldn't, it didn't take much Googling to find that this boyfriend of hers, in addition to being an abuser, is actually a fraud and a scammer with a history of selling fraudulent tickets to fake food festivals in different cities around the US. And he's currently selling tickets to a food festival coming up in the same city that I am now, and new co-director of an annual large-scale event. So I'm starting to know people and don't think the woman is innocent. She helps him promote it, knowing full well he's stealing hard-earned money from hundreds of people, just like he has done in the past. Fast forward a few weeks and I'm in an event planning meeting with the other co-director of the event and the head of the tourism bureau for our city. One of them brings up the shadiness of the upcoming food festival and how it must be a scam. And I tell them, yes, I know who's behind it, and I guarantee it is a scam. A couple of days later, it's in the news that there is someone selling fraudulent tickets to an event that no one has permits for. You're welcome. People hear this and start calling out the organizers as scammers and demanding refunds. They were selling tickets as if the event were being held in a large park. And after the exposure, they were forced to find and secure a location, which turned out to be a parking lot of a dive bar in a bad part of town. More people demand refunds because it's not what they were sold, and there starts to be a buzz about lawsuits. A few weeks later, I'm in another event planning meeting and I express concern over how fraudulent events in our city may affect the reputation of other events in the city. Some contacts the news stations and radio stations, and there are investigative reports done on this upcoming food festival. Again, people are super mad. Hundreds of people demand refunds, and customers who have bought tickets begin taking things into their own hands and calling vendors that the organizers claim to be taking part, and find that most are not coming. The organizers were lying. The day of the event comes and hundreds of people still show up hoping to get what they paid for. People drove from states away with small children hoping for a fun family event. There is only one vendor. No drinks, no live music, no kids festival, no t-shirts, no tables or chairs. Cops are called, and the one vendor that showed up is suing because he got paid nothing. I've heard the organizers are being investigated for internet fraud. They were evicted from their home, and she lost her job. Good luck finding another. Do not mess with me and my family, ever. This is the first time posting, so if I do something incorrectly, let me know and please be gentle. I'm also on my mobile, so formatting could be wonky for all I know. I'm a busy mom, so I may not be able to edit in a timely manner. Sorry in advance. Context. This is the experience of a time I was just done with people for the day. It got really messy. For work, I had to dress in upscale business attire with some antiquated ideas on ladies' wear. Like you must wear heels and nylons. I'd do any shopping or errands on my way home from work. It was years ago, so it will not be verbatim, obviously. I don't have an eidetic memory. The story. That day had been a long one due to my literally crazy boss. So while I was shopping, I had two people already ask me for help. It was an upscale mall and I was dressed similarly to the store managers. The first two were polite and apologized for the honest mistake, and I was jovial about it since they were so nice. But this is the encounter, to the best of my recollection, was a third person. Yep, the third in under 15 minutes. I was walking away from the shoes to the ladies' lingerie area, as I was shopping for nylons when the dreaded "excuse me" happened. Me knowing what's happening and what that tone meant. What kind of person probably barked so rudely and relatively loud, especially in a high-end department store? I was completely done with all the personal interactions for the day, but especially one that could be draining. So of course, I ignored the entitled person, pretending I didn't hear her. The entitled person, strident and very loudly now, moving much, much closer, says, "Excuse me." Well, she was setting me off already by being too close, and now I was whining in my head. So I sighed quite audibly on purpose and turned around and said, "Yes." "You are the manager. Where is XYZ?" No, I don't remember what it was she was looking for exactly, and I really didn't care, to be honest. "I don't know, ma'am." But she cuts me off before I can even finish the "I don't work here" thing. "Well, you should. I'm a frequent and loyal customer, so..." And I kid you not, the woman shooed me away. She was all indignant, wanting me to go find out as soon as possible. I was just blinking at her. "Well, go find out already," shouting directly in my face with spittle to boot. "Ma'am, I don't work here," with a dead-eyed expression. No, I didn't even care enough to expound upon that. "Well, I never. You are the rudest employee I've ever encountered. Go get your boss." Me frustrated and not caring anymore, cause, well, she now had shooed and snapped her fingers at me. I'm not an employee, so I'm not going to do anything but continue my own shopping. You should be ashamed of yourself for your inexcusable behavior. The entitled person, confused but going with it. "Sure you aren't," she said sarcastically. "Just go find out. I'm running late and I need XYZ. "Ma'am, I still do work here." I turn and take off. By the way, the employees at this store would never walk away from a shopper or be rude, not ever. I can hear her getting even more aggravated as I leave, but I don't care. She was rude. As I'm looking at the display of hose in a lingerie section to find the correct ones, which takes a few minutes as they aren't plentiful, I needed toeless ones for open-toe pumps, and they rearranged it since the last time I was here. I hear more screeching. There she is! Pulling an employee behind her was just a magnetic force of her displeasure. I don't turn, just knowing this is going to get ugly was the mood I'm now in. The employee looks confused and a lot worried. I think there has been a... I want that manager's name and her boss now. She'll be fired. Immediately. And give me corporate's number. This is disgraceful. So I slowly turn around, and I should warn that while I am normally very tolerant and love to help older people who need it especially, I greatly dislike stupid racist or loudly ignorant people. And I have a temper. The entitled person stepped into my space again. I let loose, yelling in her face. I hate that for good reason. Ma'am, very obviously sarcastic. For the last time, I do not work here. I step away and turn around again, trying to calm myself and avoid the catastrophe. It's silent, legit only the classical music they play in the background. I am desperately trying to find the nylons quickly so I can get the items and get the heck out of there as soon as possible, desperately trying to control my temper. I saw them and grabbed all they had, like 5, I don't know, didn't even check them to ensure they were the correct sizes. And that's when it happened. That's when it all went to heck. The entitled person grabs my arm, pinching it hard as her hand slips on my silk blouse. I bruise easily, so it ended up being a huge doozy later. She grabbed me so hard she pulled a seam on a sleeve. I think I still have it in the back of my closet. I never did wear it again, so I am not positive. What the entitled person didn't know that escalated the situation drastically was that I have extreme PTSD from being sexually assaulted by a gang, and any grabbing of my arms from behind me is a major and usually very violent trigger. I instantly flash back. Sorry, this is hard for me to recount, as even now I shake when thinking about it or the attack. This next part my hubby told me since he watched the security tapes later. I dropped my items, jerked my arm away, backed up into as good of a corner as I could, and started screaming in a panic. I started yelling stuff like, "No, don't touch me," and I slid down the wall at my back with my hands over my ears. I've gone into freeze and hide mode and repeated, "No, no, no." Entitled person then made the mistake of moving closer again in an aggressive manner. I remember some of this part. I looked up into her malicious face and went straight into fight mode, standing up abruptly and into her face, screaming aggressively. "No, you don't get to hurt me." I'm not entirely present yet, but I know something's off as there are no men near me. This is a huge lucky break because any men near me at that moment would have immediately made me go berserk and attack. I'm still in my aggressive stance, but started saying something along the lines of, "Just leave me alone, go away," and more no, no, no. The entitled person backed up, and I imagine she thought I was some crazy person, and she would have been correct right then. Somehow the employee knew I wasn't entirely there and traumatized somehow. My pupils were probably blown wide, and with the automatic sopping, my mascara was likely already streaked down my cheeks. Happy said I looked haunted when he picked me up later, as I was too distraught to drive home. The employee calmed me down a little as I noticed I wasn't being attacked that moment. That's when security arrived to see a still sopping, shaking, firmly in the throes of a panic attack from the flashback, an adrenaline-crazed person. The problem was security was all male. Back into the flashback I go, screaming and freaking out violently. I know they took the entitled person away at some point, and I hazily remember the employee sitting on a floor cross-legged nearby, but not too close. She was talking to me in soothing tones, but I don't remember what was said there. For all I know, she was repeating some alien language. I wouldn't let anyone else anywhere near me. I was too hysterical, crying, and I was starting to realize in relief it was a flashback only and became more and more embarrassed and horrified. The employee got me to give her my phone and to call my ICE contact. Happy. He told me later he explained what likely happened and told him to put him on speaker. He started doing his "you're safe" routine and was on his way. And that's what really got me out of the episode enough to start letting them help me, at a distance of course. We all ended up in the back offices as they called EMTs because I was in shock. Was white, I'm very pale, but bloodless is a different kind of pale. My heart rate went bonkers and I almost fainted. I got my meds out of my purse, took them and waited as EMTs came in to do their job. The cop who was with me was a war vet and knew exactly what was going on, how to not set me off, what to ask and so on. The entitled person was in a different area and was still going insane about the psychotic employee who attacked her and all sorts of threats. So when Hoppy got there, he heard what she was yelling and told the cops I would press charges on anyone who grabbed me and treated me like that. Turns out that another cop over with the entitled person was a distant cousin of my Hoppy. Same last name from the same great-great-grandfather or something. They talked a bit outside the room and I guess the entitled person overheard that he was my Hoppy. She tried to blame my Hoppy for my PTSD attack as he must have abused me. Hoppy disabused that notion by laying down some facts, explaining why I freaked out, what happened to me, that I was a minor at the time and that it was before we met. Hoppy says he also called her an idiotic hag as he left. All the information shut her up temporarily but didn't stop her entirely. Hoppy came in to comfort me and help me. The police finally asked once I was calm enough if I wanted to press charges, and I did. Of course, they had already seen the recordings from the security by that point, so only needed me to tell them what happened and to confirm why I freaked out. The entitled person was told she was being arrested and started up the banshee screaming again. The store manager said he would be banning her from her behavior indefinitely. At some point during that, the entitled person's kid, a teenage girl, showed up frantic looking for her mom. Mall security had escorted her and made quite the ruckus. I felt bad for the kid and saw her as she waited for her dad with security when we were escorted out into the public part of the store. The entitled person kept up the "I am innocent and this is a misunderstanding" and threatened me for doing this to her all the way until court supposedly. I really thought I would have to testify for a while, which was very stressful. The prosecutor's office called me a couple of months later to tell me she was taking the deal after the CCTV footage and the photographic proof of the ripped shirt and progress of the huge bruise she gave me were shown to her. It was a bad case that would be expensive to fight for her to only lose with that evidence. She was a first-time offender, so she got the option to do a program where they do intensive personal and some group psychotherapy, anger management, rehab, support groups, community service, and such depending on the offenses. If completed, the record gets wiped clean. She took it, and as part of the deal, she had to plead guilty in court in front of the judge beforehand. So no testifying about it in my previous assault in open court. I was very grateful for that. One last bit of justice happened though. Her work found out, and due to a clause in her contract, they fired her immediately. I found out about that from the prosecutor too. I haven't heard about her since. Never bothered to check up on her as she did her sentence and wasn't important. By the way, I still hate hosiery. This wasn't the only time someone grabbed me in public and I freaked out on them. Most recently was this last summer. Also, sorry if it's too long. I tried to trim it down without taking out too much of the needed information. And to anyone worried, I do still go to therapy, support groups and so on, and have since the gang assault happened 20 years ago. You don't get over something like this, but I am managing pretty well for the most part. Edit. This was in the greater Phoenix metro area, and it happened over a dozen years ago, so I'm doing much better for those concerned. I could get a service dog for crowding, but they are expensive and insurance doesn't like to cover them if they aren't for the blind. I've had a lot of time to recover, so the need isn't there as much for it to justify the costs. And then there is the fact that I'm slightly allergic to dogs. I used symbols on the censored words mainly for my personal well-being to not trigger other survivors or bots and cause it to be removed until reviewed. I'm keeping it that way for those who read in places where those words would jump off the page. And for all those who are survivors like me, as I don't want them to be triggered by the words as well, for your information, writing this took a lot emotionally and just putting it into text was very blatant. I didn't need to add to that. This